The last time the world officially welcomed a new sovereign state was the 9th of July 2011, when South Sudan raised its flag. In the past 20 years, only 3 names have been added: Montenegro in 2006, Kosovo in 2008, depending on who you ask, and South Sudan. But what if I told you there are over 25 places right now that could become brand new countries in the next 20 years? By 2046, the world map could look completely different. So today, we're breaking down who's actually closest to independence, and which wildcards could become one of the most powerful new nations on Earth. Some of them are closer than you think. For 35 years, Somaliland has been the most stable country that technically doesn't exist. While the rest of Somalia struggled with decades of conflict, Somaliland built a functional, peaceful democracy in the north. They have their own currency, the Somaliland shilling, they have their own biometric passports, and they even have an army that actually controls their borders. But the real game changer happened recently. In late 2025, Israel became the first major UN member to move towards formal recognition, following a historic memorandum of understanding with Ethiopia. Ethiopia needed a deep water port, Somaliland needed a friend. The diplomatic dominoes are falling. With the Red Sea more unstable than ever, Western powers are starting to realise that Somaliland isn't just a breakaway region, it's the only reliable partner left in the Horn of Africa. If you're looking for the 194th member of the UN, this is your strongest candidate. While Somaliland is fighting for recognition through strategic ports, another movement 10,000 kilometers away is using a different kind of leverage. The world's most valuable minerals. We have to head to the South Pacific. Bougainville is a group of islands in the South Pacific that has been fighting for its identity for years. In 2019, an incredible 98% of the population voted for independence from Papua New Guinea in a non-binding referendum. Since then, the negotiations have been a high-stakes chess match. The target date for full independence has been set, the 1st of September 2027. We are currently less than 18 months away. The primary challenge is the Panguna mine, one of the world's largest copper and gold deposits. Papua New Guinea is terrified of losing the revenue, while Bougainville sees it as the economic engine of their future state. Despite the friction in Port Moresby, the momentum for the Republic of Bougainville is now irreversible. But Bougainville isn't the only island in these waters looking to settle an old colonial debt. Just to the south, a piece of Europe is currently drifting away from the mainland. New Caledonia is a French territory that feels more like a South Pacific nation than a part of Europe. Under the Naumea Accord, the islands held 3 referendums on independence. While No technically won all 3, the final vote in 2021 was boycotted by the indigenous Kanak population due to the pandemic, leading to a crisis of legitimacy. The tension is reaching a breaking point. The Kanaks argue that the decolonisation process isn't over, and France is struggling to maintain its influence in a region increasingly dominated by China. If France doesn't grant a new fair path to sovereignty within the next few years, we could see a unilateral declaration of independence. New Caledonia holds 10% of the world's nickel reserves, making it an economic heavyweight that doesn't actually need Paris to survive. However, the path to sovereignty doesn't always require a breaking point. Sometimes it happens through a quiet diplomatic evolution driven by a new Cold War in the Pacific. Staying in the Pacific, these 2 are the quiet candidates. Currently, the Cook Islands and Niue are in free association with New Zealand. They use New Zealand currency and the people are New Zealand citizens, but they run their own governments and make their own laws. In the last 3 years, both have made massive strides towards full sovereignty. They have started joining international organisations like the WHO and UNESCO as independent members. The US formally recognised them as sovereign states in 2023, a move designed to counter Chinese influence in the Pacific. They are effectively countries in every way except for a seat at the UN General Assembly, as the threat of climate change requires them to negotiate their own international funding and treaties. The free association model may soon be traded for a full 100% independence. These microstates are carving out a legal niche, but they lack the one thing our next candidate has in abundance: global economic necessity. It's time to talk about the elephant in the room. With a population of 23 million, Taiwan is already a country in every functional sense. It has its own president, military, and constitution. It is the single most important 13,000 square miles on the planet. Why? Because this one island produces over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. If Taiwan stops, the modern world stops. No iPhones, no fighter jets, no global banking, the list goes on. It is the world's staggering single point of failure. A conflict here wouldn't just be a war, it would be a global economic heart attack. However, because China claims it as a province, only a handful of nations officially recognise it. The next few decades will be the most dangerous period in Taiwan's history. As China's military capabilities grow, the status quo is becoming harder to maintain. Taiwan doesn't need to become a country, it already is one, but it needs the world to formalise that reality. Whether this happens through a gradual diplomatic shift or a catastrophic conflict is the biggest question in modern geopolitics. By 2046, Taiwan will likely either be a fully recognised UN member or the centre of a global tragedy. But before we look at the next new country, we have to talk about Article 4 of the UN Charter. This is the boss level of geopolitics. To become a member, you can't just declare it. First, you need a recommendation from the Security Council that requires at least 9 out of 15 votes. But here's the catch: if even one of the permanent 5, the US, UK, France, Russia or China, says no, your dream is dead. That's the veto power. Even if you pass that, you will still need a 2/3 majority in the General Assembly. It's a process designed to be slow. Kosovo declared independence from Serbia in 2008, and while over 100 countries recognise it, it remains locked out of the United Nations. The reason comes down to geopolitics. Russia and China have both signalled they would use their veto power in the Security Council to block its membership. It is the perfect example of the Article 4 deadlock. Despite this, Kosovo has been steadily integrating with European institutions. It has secured visa-free travel to the EU and continues to push towards NATO and broader international recognition. Its path to becoming a fully recognised state ultimately depends on normalising relations with Serbia. But until that happens, Kosovo remains one of the clearest examples of a country that exists in practice but not fully on paper. Kosovo is the ghost at the UN table. But the same spirit of separation is now haunting the oldest and most stable unions in the West, and it starts with the potential collapse of the United Kingdom. And we haven't even reached the most dangerous potential breakups yet. If you're into this kind of deep dive, please subscribe, because what's coming next could completely reshape Europe. The dream of an independent Scotland is the zombie of British politics. It refuses to die, no matter how many times Westminster tries to bury it. In 2014, Scotland held a once-in-a-generation referendum where 55% voted to remain in the UK. But then came Brexit. Scotland voted overwhelmingly to stay in the EU, and many Scots feel they were dragged out against their will. For years, the movement was stuck in a legal deadlock. In 2022, the UK Supreme Court ruled that the Scottish Parliament couldn't hold a referendum without London's permission. So the Scottish National Party changed the game. As we speak in April 2026, the SNP has staked everything on a referendum mandate strategy for the upcoming 7th of May elections. Their message is simple: if they win a majority of seats, they will declare a formal mandate to hold IndyRef 2 in 2028. They are no longer just asking for permission, they are trying to use the democratic weight of the Scottish Parliament to force the UK government into a corner. Scotland has the oil, the wind energy and the educated population to be a successful Nordic-style state. It is the most likely domino to fall in the West. For a long time, Welsh independence was a fringe idea compared to the Scottish movement, but something changed during the pandemic and the subsequent economic crisis. Support for Yes Cymru has surged to record highs, specifically among the youth. The argument is simple: if Scotland leaves, what is left for Wales? A United Kingdom that is just England, a tiny corner of Ireland, and Wales feels like an imbalanced partnership. While Wales is more economically integrated with England than Scotland is, the rise of Welsh medium education and a distinct cultural identity is driving a new political reality. If the UK starts to fracture, Wales will likely be forced to choose between being an English satellite or an independent nation within the European Union. Northern Ireland is currently experiencing a demographic and political earthquake. For the first time in history, Catholics outnumber Protestants, and Sinn Féin, a party dedicated to Irish reunification, is the largest force in the Stormont government. The Good Friday Agreement explicitly allows for a border poll if it appears a majority want to join the Republic of Ireland. With the Irish Sea border keeping Northern Ireland in the EU single market for goods, the region is economically drifting away from London and towards Dublin. Reunification wouldn't technically create a new country, but it would create a new island. The 20-year outlook for Northern Ireland is a steady march towards a referendum that will end the 100-year partition of the island. If the UK is a story of post-Brexit regret, the next fracture is a story of economic pride. We have to cross the English Channel to the Iberian Peninsula. In 2017, Catalonia held an independence referendum in which a staggering 92% voted for independence. The Spanish government declared it illegal, leading to police violence and the exile of Catalan leaders. The world watched in shock as one of Europe's most prosperous regions tried to break away. Today the fire hasn't gone out, it's just smouldering. The Catalan economy is larger than that of many EU countries, and the feeling of being robbed by Madrid's tax system is a powerful motivator. As of 2026, the Spanish government has had to rely on Catalan separatist parties to maintain a majority in Madrid, leading to amnesties and concessions. This salami slicing of power is leading towards a confederation model, which many see as the final step before full independence in the 2030s. Like Catalonia, the Basque country in northern Spain has a distinct language, culture, and a long history of seeking autonomy. However, the Basque movement has taken a quieter, more tactical approach. They already have some of the highest levels of fiscal autonomy in Europe. They collect their own taxes and send a portion to Madrid, rather than the other way round. This economic freedom has made them one of the wealthiest regions in Spain. Because of this, the urge to leave is less about survival and more about identity. If Catalonia successfully breaks away or gains state-like status, the Basques will not be far behind. They are watching the Catalan experiment closely, ready to move the moment the Spanish state shows a terminal crack. Spain is fighting to keep its borders intact, but further north, two of the most stable democracies in the world are facing an ethnic and linguistic divorce that could happen without firing a single shot. Canada is often seen as the most stable country on earth, but it has a Quebec-sized hole in its heart. After two failed referendums in 1980 and 1995, the latter lost by less than 1%. The independence movement went into a long winter. That winter is ending. The party Québécois has seen a massive resurgence in 2025 and 2026, fueled by concerns over the survival of the French language and a desire for more control over immigration. The current leadership has promised a third referendum by 2030. Unlike the previous attempts, a Quebec 3.0 vote would take place in a world where the US-Canada relationship is more volatile, making the argument for a sovereign Quebec as a stable North American partner more appealing to the international community. Belgium is less a unified nation and more a political compromise between two very different regions. It is a marriage of convenience between the Dutch-speaking Flanders in the north and the French-speaking Wallonia in the south. The two halves have different media, different political parties, and different economies. In fact, Belgium holds the world record for the longest time spent without a functioning government. The separatist Vlaams Belang and N-VA parties dominate the polls in Flanders. They aren't looking for a violent revolution, they are looking for a velvet divorce, similar to what happened between the Czechs and Slovaks. By 2040, the capital of Brussels might be a city-state of the EU, while Flanders joins the world stage as a wealthy independent maritime power. If Belgium is a marriage of convenience, France's overseas departments are a marriage of distance, and 6,000 kilometers from Paris, the Atlantic is getting restless. Next we head to Central America in the shape of Guadeloupe and Martinique. These two islands are overseas departments of France, meaning they are technically as much of a part of France as Paris is. But the reality is very different. Large-scale protests over the cost of living and the legacy of colonialism have rocked the islands in recent years. In 2024, the French government began offering increased autonomy to New Caledonia and Corsica, and the leaders in Guadeloupe and Martinique are asking, why not us? The distance, both geographical and cultural, is becoming too much to ignore. While they currently rely on French subsidies, there is a growing movement to form a Caribbean federation or seek full independence to better manage their own resources and regional trade. Bermuda is a British overseas territory, but it is also one of the wealthiest places on Earth as a global hub for the insurance industry. It doesn't need financial help from London. The debate over independence has been a luxury problem. However, as the UK's global influence shifts post-Brexit, many Bermudians feel that being tied to a mid-sized European power is a hindrance rather than a help. The 20-year outlook for Bermuda is a move towards a Singapore-style city-state model. They have the capital, the infrastructure and the location to be a sovereign financial superpower in the Atlantic. The status of Puerto Rico is the great unfinished business of the United States. It is a territory where millions of US citizens live but have no vote in Congress or for the president. Every few years they hold a non-binding referendum. Usually statehood wins, but there is a passionate and growing minority that wants full independence. As the US becomes more politically polarized, the likelihood of Congress admitting Puerto Rico as the 51st state remains low, as it would shift the balance of power in Washington. This frustration is fueling the independence movement. By 2046, if the path to statehood remains blocked, the Puerto Rican Republic may become the only viable way for the island to gain its dignity. While Bermuda and Puerto Rico argue over ballots and tax codes, the map is also changing in places where the ink is written in blood. This is where things stop becoming political and start becoming violent. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a country held together by a fragile peace treaty known as the Dayton Accords. It is divided into two main entities, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Republika Srpska, the Serb-led half. The leader of the Republika Srpska, Milorad Dodik, has been threatening to secede. As of 2026, he has moved from threats to action, pulling out of national institutions like the tax authority and the judiciary. He is betting on the support of Russia and Hungary to back a declaration of independence. If the Republika Srpska leaves, it effectively kills Bosnia as a state. This is the most dangerous potential new country in Europe, as its birth would likely involve a return to the ethnic violence of the 1990s. The borders of Europe are under pressure, but the borders of Africa, largely drawn by colonial rulers with rulers and pens, are reaching a breaking point. Since 2017, a brutal civil war has been raging in Cameroon between the French-speaking government and the English-speaking minority in the west. The separatists call their desired country Ambazonia. They argue that they were forced into a union with French Cameroon in 1961 and have been treated as second-class citizens ever since. The conflict has seen thousands killed and hundreds of thousands displaced. The central government has failed to crush the insurgency, and Ambazonia has its own interim government in exile. If the aging leadership in Cameroon passes without a peaceful transition, the fracture will become a permanent break, creating a new English-speaking state in West Africa. In the vast deserts of northern Mali, the Tuareg people have long dreamed of their own state, which they call Azawad. They briefly declared independence in 2012 before being pushed back by Islamist groups and international intervention. However, the vacuum left by the withdrawal of UN and French forces in 2024 has allowed the Tuareg rebels to regain control of major cities like Kidal. The military junta in Bamako is struggling to maintain control of the south, let alone the north. Azawad is a de facto reality in the Sahara right now. Yemen was actually two different countries, North Yemen and South Yemen, until they unified in 1990. That union has been a disaster. Yemen has been torn apart by a complex civil war. The Southern Transitional Council, backed by the UAE, is openly fighting for the restoration of an independent South Yemen. They already control much of the southern coastline and the strategic port of Aden. International peace talks are increasingly acknowledging that a unified Yemen is a myth. The most likely outcome of the conflict is a divorce that returns the map to its pre-1990 state, creating a new pro-Western South Yemeni state that controls the entrance to the Red Sea. Like Yemen, Libya is a country in name only. Since the fall of Gaddafi in 2011, it has been split between a Western government in Tripoli and an Eastern government in Tobruk and Benghazi. They have different central banks and different international backers. The East is where the majority of Libya's oil is located, giving them the economic muscle to survive on their own. After 15 years of failed UN-led elections, the appetite for a unified Libya is vanishing. By 2030, we could see the formalisation of Cyrenaica in the east and Tripolitania in the west as two separate sovereign states, finally ending the cycle of civil war. The name Biafra still carries the weight of one of the most tragic civil wars in history. In the late 1960s, the Igbo people of southeastern Nigeria tried to secede, leading to a war that killed over 1 million people. Today, the movement is back. Organisations like the indigenous people of Biafra have massive support among the youth who feel the central Nigerian government has failed them. Nigeria is a giant with a population set to explode to 400 million, but it is plagued by corruption and insecurity. If Nigeria cannot find a way to decentralise power, the Biafra pressure cooker will explode. An independent Biafra will be an economic powerhouse in Africa, but its birth will be a geopolitical earthquake. Now, further north to Western Sahara. This is often called Africa's last colony. For decades, the Polisario Front has fought for the independence of Western Sahara from Morocco. While Morocco currently controls about 80% of the territory and has gained major diplomatic support from US and Israel, the Sahrawi people continue to operate a government in exile in refugee camps in Algeria. This is a frozen conflict that is starting to heat up again. As of 2026, the Sahrawi Republic is recognised by the African Union but not the UN. The near future will see either a total Moroccan annexation or a breakthrough that creates a small mineral-rich Sahrawi state. As a direct result of the Western Sahara conflict, a new movement has gained ground in North Africa, Kabylia. This is a region in northern Algeria inhabited by the Berber people. Algeria supports the independence of Western Sahara from Morocco. In response, Morocco has begun supporting the independence of Kabylia from Algeria. The movement for the self-determination of Kabylia has its own provisional government and a very distinct cultural and linguistic identity. If Algeria faces internal instability, Kabylia is ready to step through the door. This is a perfect example of how one new country movement can trigger another in a neighbouring state. This is where the world map stops evolving and starts resisting change. Transnistria is a strip of land between Moldova and Ukraine that has been a frozen Soviet relic since 1992. It has its own currency with the hammer and sickle, its own government, but it is unrecognised by any UN member. It is effectively a Russian satellite state. However, the war in Ukraine has changed everything. Transnistria is now surrounded by hostile territory. Moldova is pushing for EU membership and wants the Russian troops out. The independence of Transnistria is a forbidden dream that will likely be resolved in the next decade, either through a forced reintegration into Moldova or as part of a wider, darker redrawing of Eastern European borders. Transnistria is a relic of the Soviet past, but the greatest threats to the current map lie in the internal pressure cookers of the world's rising superpowers. To see them, we have to move from the flat plains of Eastern Europe to the highest plateau on Earth. The struggle for an independent Tibet is one of the most famous independence movements in the world, symbolised by the Dalai Lama. While China's control over the roof of the world is total and its Sinicization policies are aggressive, the Tibetan government in exile remains a powerful symbol. The real test will come when the 14th Dalai Lama passes away. The succession will be a global crisis, with Beijing and the exiled Tibetans both naming a successor. While independence feels impossible today, things can change very quickly. Any significant internal instability in China, economic or political, could see Tibet move for autonomy or independence, supported by its neighbour India. After the 2019 protests and the subsequent national security law, Hong Kong's one country, two systems model is effectively dead. The city is being integrated into the mainland at high speed. However, the Hong Konger identity is now stronger than ever, especially in the diaspora. Many Hong Kong independence activists are now operating from London, Vancouver and Taipei. While a new country called Hong Kong seems like a fantasy in 2026, history is full of city-states that regain their freedom. If the Chinese Communist Party ever faces a Soviet-style collapse, the first place to fly a new flag will be Hong Kong. The Kurds are the largest ethnic group in the world without a state of their own. Roughly 35 million people spread across Iraq, Syria, Turkey and Iran. They have come tantalisingly close to statehood multiple times. Currently, Iraqi Kurdistan has its own parliament and military, the Peshmerga, and Rojava in northern Syria is a de facto autonomous region. In 2017, Iraqi Kurds voted 92% for independence, but the world looked the other way. The Kurds are the most effective fighters against extremism in the region and have been reliable Western allies. As the borders of the Middle East, drawn by the British and French after World War I, continue to fail, a sovereign Kurdistan is the most logical correction to the map. Xinjiang is a massive resource-rich region in western China, home to the Uyghur people. The international community has raised alarms over re-education camps and human rights abuses in the region, which activists call East Turkestan. China views any talk of independence here as a threat to its territorial integrity and its Belt and Road energy routes. Like Tibet and Hong Kong, Xinjiang's path to statehood is currently blocked by the overwhelming power of the Chinese state. However, the Uyghur diaspora is organised and increasingly influential. The 20-year outlook depends entirely on the stability of the central government in Beijing. Palestine is recognised as a state by over 140 UN members, but it lacks full sovereignty, a contiguous territory and control over its borders. The tragedy of the conflict over the last few years has pushed the two-state solution back to the centre of global diplomacy. There is a massive international push to formalise a Palestinian state with full UN membership as the only way to ensure long-term peace. The challenge is the facts on the ground. Settlements in the West Bank and the political split between Gaza and Ramallah. In the next few years, Palestine will either be a fully functioning sovereign UN member or the two-state solution will be a historical footnote in a single-state reality. Finally, the wildcards. The scenarios that wouldn't just add a name to the map, they would break it. The idea of a US state seceding used to be the plot of bad action movies. Today, it is the topic of mainstream political discussion. In a hyper-polarized America, national divorce has become a buzzword. Texas has a long-standing Texit movement, fueled by disputes over border control and federal overreach. California, the world's fifth largest economy, has seen Calexit talk every time a Republican is in the White House. Hawaii has a legitimate indigenous sovereignty movement that views the 1893 overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom as illegal. While the US Constitution doesn't provide a path for secession, a constitutional crisis in the next few decades could lead to a soft secession, where states simply stop recognising federal authority, creating new countries in all but name. Greenland is a massive island with a tiny population of 56,000 people. It is currently an autonomous territory of Denmark, but it is moving towards independence at high speed. In 2023, Greenland unveiled its first draft constitution. The wild card here is climate change. As the ice sheets melt, billions of dollars in rare earth minerals and oil are becoming accessible. Greenland is also becoming a strategic real estate prize for the US and China. If Greenland can secure the mining revenue to replace its Danish subsidies, it will declare independence. By 2040, Greenland could be the Qatar of the North, a tiny population with massive resource wealth and a seat at the United Nations. Chuuk is one of the 4 states that make up the Federated States of Micronesia in the Pacific. For years, Chuuk has been pushing for a referendum to leave the Federation and become an independent nation. They feel that the central government doesn't distribute US aid fairly. Chuuk has the largest population in the FSM and a strategic deep water lagoon that was a major World War II base. The US is wary, as a Chuukese republic might be more open to Chinese investment. This is a classic microstate wildcard. We could see Chuuk join the list of the world's smallest sovereign nations. Since the 1960s, a low-level insurgency has been fought in West Papua for independence from Indonesia. The indigenous Melanesian population argues that they are culturally and ethnically distinct from the rest of Indonesia. The region is home to the Grasberg mine, one of the world's largest copper and gold mines, which provides massive revenue to Jakarta. Because of this, Indonesia has been very aggressive in suppressing the independence movement. However, international awareness is growing, and neighbouring Pacific nations are becoming more vocal in their support. If Indonesia undergoes a period of political instability, West Papua will be the first region to break away. Next is the reverse wildcard. While the rest of the video has been about countries splitting apart, the East African Federation is about countries coming together. Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Somalia are currently in the process of forming a single sovereign state. This isn't just a trade union like the EU, it's a plan for a single president, a single military, and a single currency. They are drafting the Confederation Constitution. If the East African Federation actually happens, it will be a gigantic shift in the global balance of power. We are talking about a new country with a population larger than the entire United States, squeezed into a landmass twice the size of Alaska. It wouldn't just be another country in Africa, it would be the world's next superpower, born almost out of nowhere. The challenges are massive: corruption, ethnic conflict in the DRC, and the egos of long-term leaders. But the economic logic is undeniable. If this flag is raised in 2035, it will be the most significant change to the world map since the end of the colonial era. In the last 20 years, we only got 3 new names, but the ever-growing geopolitical tensions suggest the next 20 years will be much more crowded. If you had to bet on one new country by 2046, what is it? And which others have I missed? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the maps of tomorrow. Thanks for watching Mapped Out.